Well, you know, you may not have heard any speech from the president on this particular day where he took the oath of office, but there's a speech. And guess what? Someone dug deep. He's seen some speeches. Jide Ogunsawo joins us here this morning. Jide.
Chamberlain, it's always my pleasure to be here, you know.
Well, yeah, it's lots of people looking to see, look, why didn't he read any of those speeches? But yes, you will come up with something. You dug deep and found something. But if you get back to 2015, he made a speech at that time, and it struck a chord. But how about now?
So here's what we should look at. What are the things that have happened in the past 4 years?
Yeah.
We've seen 4 speeches, 2015, 2016, 2017, it was the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, that delivered that message. And in 2018, the President delivered his message. Well, here's what you find interesting in 2015.
Yeah.
The major word was, I belong to everybody, but I belong, and I belong to nobody. But this is not the first, that wasn't the first time we were going to be hearing the politics of belonging. Exactly in 1979, Chief Awolowo talked about, I know where I belong. But here's why this is important. Based on the National Bureau of Statistics' own reports, there are 40 million Nigerians who have nowhere that they belong to. And what do I mean by 40 million? Those are the 40 million Nigerians that are classified as either unemployed or underemployed. And so while 2015, the focus was on Buhari, today the focus is on those 40 million Nigerians that we need to ensure that they belong to some place. Now, in 2016, the Rhetoric had moved from where the president belonged to something else. The focus was on restoring security, corruption, and restructuring the economy. And that was the continuation of the speech of 2015, where he had also talked about security, corruption, and restoring the economic strength and making sure that the economy was prosperous. So we saw a continuation of those keywords in 2016. And in 2016 as well, he had mentioned about how we was going to grow the economy, and that was putting less reliance on a lot of food imports that were sucking up the dollar revenue. So what we've seen is a significant reduction in rice, wheat, sugar, and fish imports. So based on his 2016 speech of food reduction bill, that has been achieved, even though we are still to see a lot of measurable progress when we consider security and tackling corruption. But yes, the evidence we have today shows this significant reduction in food importation bill. Now, we wouldn't see any speech from 2017 because the president didn't deliver any speech in 2017, Chamberlain. But in 2018, we see a significant similarity between 2015, 2016, and 2018. Again, the president has said public safety and security remains the primary focus of government. And he then went further to say the second primary objective of his administration will be to fight corruption headlong. Again, in 2018, he had talked about security and safety being the primary focus of the government, and the second objective will be corruption. But here's why a lot of people were concerned. In the Constitution mandates that the primary responsibility of the government should be security, which the president had talked about. But in the Constitution, the second responsibility in section 14 is welfare. So the Constitution states in section 14 that the primary responsibility of the government should be security and welfare. And while the president had talked about welfare, which is the growth of the economy in his previous speech, in 2018, he had talked about safety and security being his primary duty, and the second, when a lot of people had thought he was going to talk about welfare, he had said the second primary objective of his administration will be corruption.
So we've seen the pattern.
We've seen a pattern,
but
yes,
he has also made some comments this year, 2019. Is there any similar pattern?
So what we will do is a lot of Nigerians have shown concerns about there was no speech made some hours ago. So we'll try and make a forecast that if he had delivered a speech, what will his speech have sounded like? But before we deliver that forecast, let's look at some of the promises that had been made in 2015, where they achieved, and then what we should look out for in 2019. And here are the top 10 promises based on a survey of what he had said in 2015. 3 million jobs per year was one of the promises that were made. The challenge is the evidence from the Bureau of Statistics shows that the government is far behind achieving 3 million jobs. In the second quarter of 2015, the fact from the National Bureau of Statistics shows that unemployment and underemployment was 27%, and the unemployment and underemployment rate that has been reported today is over 40%. And all the evidence shows that the government has a good intention of achieving 3 million jobs, but the intentions have not materialized into achieving the targets that they set for themselves. The second is the free daily meal for all primary school students.
It was a point of controversy until even recently.
Oh, yes. What the government has revealed now is that there are over 9 million students in public primary schools that are enjoying the free meals, and there's also the value chain, because there are lots of those students that are getting those meals because they are new farmers. So there seems to be a benefit. But the emphasis is free daily school meal for all. Chamberlain, even though the government is providing 9 million children with free school meals, the evidence shows that there are over 20 million children in public primary schools. So when we look at the target for all public primary schools, that target also hasn't been achieved, even though the target has gone far, which is over 9 million primary school students that are enjoying free meals.
The states also come in here.
States also come in here. So let's look at one of the third promise, the equitable distribution of revenue to state and local governments. The evidence shows that today, the federal government still gets 53% of the all revenue, the states get 27%, and the local governments get 20%. So that hasn't changed. That promise of a more equitable distribution of revenue is still static. And into the fourth point.
Yeah, which is the big one, because many different people have different impressions, understanding, and expectations of what this fourth one will be.
Devolution of powers. Oof. What bothers me about devolution of powers, Chamberlain, is, and listen carefully to this. In 1939, Bernard Bodilon had created 3 regions out of Nigeria. Again, listen to this, 1939, 3 regions. 4 decades after, we found ourselves in 1979. Exactly 4 decades after, we no longer had 3 regions, we had 12 states. 4 decades after 1979 is where we are right now, 2019. We no longer have 19 states, we have 36 states. Yeah. So the evidence shows that as the years progress, we've seen a dissolution of the unit called Nigeria. So the forecast is, what do you think the Nigeria of 2059 would look like, Chamberlain, without a devolution of powers to the federating units? Because the evidence does show that if we look at those 40-year blocks, 1939 we had 3 regions, 1979, which was 40 years after 1939, we had those states. 40 years after, we have 36 states. Without devolution of powers and without we making those states and local governments more responsible, then the future could be a bit more controversial.
But what picture is he trying to paint with these 6 regional development agencies? The
6 regional developments is part of the way of implementing the devolution of powers, which is to be able to put more power into those regional blocks to ensure that they are also able to serve the people rather than putting a lot of pressure and emphasis on the federal government. But I think that the challenge has been implementing that without changing the constitution. So clearly, for us to have devolution of powers, or for us to have the 6 regional development agencies that was a promise of the government, they have to be able to change the constitution and ensure that that is implementable.
Are we likely to have challenges with that textile, food processing and all?
Food processing, perhaps the future looks brighter because we've been able to reduce food import bill. That was a big promise. But reviving the textile industry, which is reviving manufacturing, seems to be a huge problem for the government. Also because electricity is a key factor of production for the textile industry. So once you want to revive the textile industry, yes, you need talent, yes, you need labor, you need capital, but one key factor is to ensure that your textile industry is competitive, Chamberlain. And one of the ways to ensure the textile industry is competitive is to ensure that the factors of production, the cost of production are quite low. And without that, we can't revive the textile industry, even though the central bank is trying to ensure that they get single-digit loans to the food processing agencies, to the agricultural companies, and to some manufacturing companies.
So run us through the rest up until the 10th.
Social security for 25 million poor Nigerians. We have over 300,000 Nigerians collecting the conditional cash transfers. You have over 500,000 Nigerians on the Empower program, but again, Chamberlain, the target was 25 million poor Nigerians, and there's no evidence today that shows that the social security net today captures 25 million Nigerians, even though there's a social security net. But again, we're focusing on the promise of 25 million poor Nigerians, and hopefully within the next 4 years, more poor Nigerians will be involved in the social security program. The 8th promise among the top 10 was to bring permanent, emphasis on the word permanent peace and solutions to the insurgency issues in the Northeast, the Niger Delta region, and other conflict-prone states. While the Global Terrorism Database provides us evidence that the rate of terrorism has declined, which is measured by the number of deaths and the number of casualties due to terrorism, the goal of bringing permanent peace, underline the word permanent, has still not been achieved. And so today, we seem to be evolving from the Boko Haram crisis to the herdsmen crisis to bandits to kidnapping and to severe armed robbery. We're making progress on this based on the Global Terrorism Database of measuring progress. However, we see a renewed spike of threats, especially from the middle of last year. So the security agencies need to ensure that we perform better, and especially the government, to ensure that it meets up to its promise of bringing permanent peace and solutions. What we have seen in the first 2 years was we saw some progress, but now we see a potential spike and a reversal of the progress that was initially made in the first 1.5 years. For instance, the Global Terrorism Database says the height of terrorism was in 2014, Chamberlain, over 7,000 deaths due to terrorism. Their evidence shows us for 2017, which is their most recent report, total deaths due to terrorism is below 2,000. Is that where we want to be? No. But is that a significant progress from 2014? Yes, it is. But we need to keep our eyes to ensure that that progress that we had made does not reverse.
All right. So, go roll on to the next one.
Making our economy the fastest growing economies in the world, looking at a growth rate of 10 to 12% GDP, Chamberlain, was the target the government set to itself. What we've seen in the first 4 years is we've seen ourselves go from low growth rates to a recession back to a low growth rate. So right now, growth rate is 2%, far from the target of 10%, far below our population growth rate of 3.2%. And until we're able to get double-digit growth rates, then both of us and a lot of millions of Nigerians will not be able to smile to the bank. So the government needs to be able to look at faster ways and more effective ways, also more efficient ways to ensure that that promise of 10 to 12% GDP growth rate moves away from our current growth rate of 2% right now. And the final on our top 10 list of promises that were made in 2015 was to make information technology, manufacturing, agriculture the key drivers of the Nigerian economy. Today, the evidence shows that last year, total exports was 19 trillion naira. Agriculture and manufactured goods, based on the evidence from the NBS, shows that manufactured goods contributed less than 1 trillion naira to our total exports of 19 trillion naira. In other words, Chamberlain, crude oil still remains the top earner for the country.
Well, this is 2019. We may not touch on all of them, but let's see. Go ahead. Let's
2019,
see how far we can go.
What we want to look at is the promises that possibly a lot of Nigerians will be hoping will be achieved within the next 4 years. Completion of major rail projects, new skill development for up to 10 million Nigerians, another 6 million Nigerians to have jobs in the agricultural sector. Yeah. But one of the ones I'm really interested in is the launch of the Entrepreneurs Bank. Because what the government intends to achieve is a bank that's able to provide debt and equity, provide good advice to a lot of young Nigerians that can't get full-time jobs but have great ideas. Nigerians like you, Chamberlain, Nigerians like several millions of Nigerians that are looking at investing in new ideas. And in summary, the Entrepreneurs Bank is meant to be an ideas bank. And we hope that the government will be able to invest in that and achieve the records that they want to achieve. So, and those are the top 10 promises.
Are we getting to the speech yet?
Oh, yes, we should look at the speech. Now, here's what we should look at next. What the president has focused on his previous three Democracy Day speeches that he made on May 29, 2015, 2016, and 2018. Here's what you notice, Chamberlain. In his 3 Democracy Day speeches, look at those keywords: security, Boko Haram, corruption, jobs, employment, infrastructure. What he has used, the word he's used the most is security. 20 times, 20 mentions of security in his 3 previous Democracy Day speeches. So we clearly see what the president is focusing on: security. Same thing, Boko Haram. We've seen 14 mentions of Boko Haram across those 3 previous Democracy Day speeches. Corruption and Boko Haram are tied, 14 mentions of corruption. But look here, where Nigerians are bothered about jobs and employment, we've only seen 8 mentions of jobs and employment within the last 3 Democracy Day speeches, and infrastructure, 5 mentions. What do all of this mean? It simply means insecurity is distracting the president from focusing on jobs, employment, and infrastructure. So we see a lot of what is on his mind: security, Boko Haram, corruption. And because these are the 3 top things on his mind, jobs, employment, and infrastructure are getting less mentions. And in other words, again, insecurity is distracting the president from focusing on creating jobs, employment, and the welfare that we all deserve. So if we can't solve, or if the government isn't able to solve the insecurity challenges, it is highly unlikely, based on this trend, for us to see solutions in the jobs and infrastructure environment.
So the big Democracy Day speech.
Oh, the big Democracy Day speech. What will happen on June 12th? But here's what I can tell you, because a lot of concerns have come up on, is it healthy? Will the age play a significant role? But here's what we found. There seems to be no significant difference in this reading speed of the president. So his first speech in 2015, yes, over 1,900 words, but he spoke them at the speed of 97 words per minute. Let's look at what happened in 2016. Not a major significant difference. We see him reading at the speed of 100 words per minute in 2016. So he moved from 97 words per minute in 2015. It was reading a bit faster, not significantly faster, but a bit faster in 2016 to 100 words per minute. And then in 2018, remember in 2017, he didn't read a speech. And in 2018, we see him move back to the 90s region. A bit slower in his reading, now 93 words per minute. So in other words, within the 3 previous Democracy Day speeches, the president's reading speed has moved within that range of 93 words per minute to 100 words per minute. So there hasn't been any significant deterioration in the president's reading ability, or there also hasn't been any significant appreciation in his reading speed. We see a balance between, and a fair consistency in how he reads.
Is it big on social media?
Very weak on social media. But however, Chamberlain, it was big on social media before the elections. Here's what I mean. 158 days from when the president opened his social media handle at Buhari, he had tweeted 1,604 times. If you work that out, Chamberlain, it was tweeting prior to 2015 election at the speed of 10 tweets per day. In other words, it was reaching out to the majority of Nigerians who are online. An average of 10 tweets per day before the 2015 election. Look at what has happened between 2015 and today. Today is 1,461 days in office. Ooh. He has only tweeted 2,033 times. If you work that out, that's just an average of 1 tweet a day. So what we've seen is, prior to coming in, the president was active on social media, moving at 10 tweets per day. His communication rate online is around down to 1 tweet.
I have an idea of which aides will come back and which one may not come back now.
Your guess is as good as mine, but here's why this is important. The evidence shows that more than half of Nigerians today, more than half of the 200 million Nigerians that we've estimated to be living within these borders are below the age of 35. A lot of them are on social media. And if the president isn't communicating effectively on social media, then his perception and the sentiments around his performance wouldn't be so positive. So the president needs to correct that error. It's not yet a mistake, but the president needs to correct the error of reducing his communication online, because he once had communicated much faster online. So we expect that within the next 4 years, he will be communicating better and more effectively and sharing his plans and vision of a new Nigeria to a lot of millions of Nigerians online. But in the final analysis, let's put our minds back to what happened exactly on this day in 2015. This was the headline of Punch. And this was the scorecard given to Jonathan based on the survey that was conducted by the newspaper, electricity, oil and gas. And if you look at this carefully, what you notice is there were more scores in red, which is poor, than was for fair. So the president, when the former president had been scored fair on roads, aviation, sports, and agriculture. Every other thing was rated as poor. So millions of Nigerians, we're not going to do that rating, but millions of Nigerians should take this template and put the president's name on it as their own personal scorecard, and they should ask themselves, how do you score the president on electricity, oil and gas, roads, aviation, railways, education, health, sports, security, economic affairs, agriculture, and your standard of living? And that is the final analysis for Nigerians. Look at this scorecard and you fill it by yourself, and then you'll be able to determine how the president has performed in his first 4 years, and perhaps what you should expect in the next 4 years.
Well, at least now we have an idea of what the president's speechwriter may be thinking about with social security, so that will also rank topmost, perhaps, when you see this. But if he says it's going to surprise a lot of people, you just may see another kind of speech. Jide Ogunsawo, thank you for coming on.
Pleasure
today.
is always mine, Chamberlain.